I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. It is 6:34. I'm happy to hear that everyone's doing relatively well despite the temperatures outside. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just us. There's no citizen comments. Oh, we need to roll call in, don't we? Or are we not supposed to do that? We don't need to? We don't know.
We can do it. We should probably do it because we're remote. They haven't been doing it at the board meetings, but the board meetings have been.
Right. Yeah. And I realize we haven't been doing it either. Julie, if you don't mind roll calling us just so we have like an official of who's here.
Okay. JC Herman.
I'm here.
Natalie Salee.
Here.
Andrew Weimer.
Here.
Elaine Siegel. Absent.
And then, of course, just take note that Aisha has joined us today. Thank you. Would anybody like to move to approve the minutes from November 3rd, 2022?
I will move to approve the minutes.
Andrew, are you interested in seconding that?
Well, just sign me up for that. Why don't you?
Awesome. Julie, could you roll call us for the minutes, please?
JC Herman.
Yes.
Natalie Salee.
Yes.
Andrew Weimer.
Yes.
Do I say Elaine? Or Elaine?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I mean, I guess we're kind of in the same boat that we were last time. Elaine said that she was going to watch the meeting and she will, get caught up on what we're working on. Do we want to go over the basketball stuff again? So we can be ready for a recommendation for December?
I think it might be helpful. I sent out, I sent everybody a copy of what the skate rules look like. And then I took the exact same template and erased the things that weren't applicable and just added a couple lines that we had been discussing. I anticipate there's conversation to be had about that. So I don't know if you want to wait until Elaine is here. I know that you had asked us if we were available to meet on the 1st or the 4th Thursdays instead. So if we do meet on the first ones, then we will be meeting before the December meeting. And maybe we could pick it up at that point. Just an idea.
It's the 4th one that everyone's available for, the 4th Thursday. So I think we will be able to switch it to work on that day instead, so that Elaine can participate. But that being said, I also, we had spoken about about not being in a rush on this either. So do we want to table this? That will also, and I apologize, Natalie, I did not get my questions to you, although I do have a list of questions for the basketball survey.
Okay.
Do we want to sit on this and then prepare for a recommendation to go in January?
I mean, that's fine with me. I would say if you're able to get me, Andrew sent me his today. If you're able to send me yours, and then maybe we can just send an email to Elaine so she knows what we're talking about. If I can get those before the January meeting, I can, like, well before then, or I'm sorry, not the January, the next time we meet as a group in December, I can get it all compiled, send it out so everybody has a chance to look it over for our December meeting. So that way it can be ready to go. I think that's fine. And I think with the court sign, same thing. If you want to look at what I've sent and then maybe send me your ideas for additions to that, or edits to that, then I can make a revised of that too. So that we can be ready to have a discussion and be settled on it to take the recommendation to the board. Because, you know, who knows, they might be making edits too, or changes or whatever, but at least we can be prepared with our recommendation of what we think it should say and why.
I think one of the things it might be important to do is to come to consensus around the goal for the survey, so that then the questions, because no one is seeing each other's questions, so that the questions are aligned from the beginning. So then when Elaine also watches the meeting, she's on the same, has the same goal in mind.
That's fantastic idea.
To that point, just based on what I've seen from Andrew's questions, his are very much aligned with mine, in terms of like, where are you coming from to use the court? What other courts do you use? Have you had good experiences on the court? Do you have any suggestions for it? Do you have any ideas on like a basketball league or that like programming ideas? It's very much aligned with like, what is your, and they're very simple questions that are either yes or no, to the point, essentially speaking to their experience on our courts. So that was very much aligned with what I was thinking as well. JC, is that where you're at too, or did you have?
I had those exact same questions. I think the only other ones that I added in there was like, because I thought it would be helpful to get an idea of how often people like, so like, you know, how frequently do you play? I think was the other question that I had.
That's a good question. Time of day, days that you're coming. I think that also helps me know, like, if I'm planning something and we are taking the nets down, maybe I can avoid like a super heavily used time and day. Try to develop things around, you know, a schedule where people seem to be using the courts a lot.
Yes, and then my other question was how many years? Right, like how many years have you been using the Ridgeville courts? Because I'm guessing we're going to have some people who've been using it for 10, 20 years.
Sure.
And for people that are kind of newer, and I think that would be helpful to know too.
Okay. Will you just shoot me an email at some point with those questions as well? Yes. And whatever other questions you had. I'm essentially, I think a lot of us are going to have the same questions, so I'm essentially just marrying those things together and then creating the survey so we all get our questions answered.
So in terms of goals for these questions, we want to know how people are using the courts, how, when, and what else they would like.
Do you mind writing a note down to send me with your email? Will you ask about communications? What is the best way to communicate changes or updates or schedules with the court if folks prefer like signage, emails, texts, preferred communication, I guess.
Got it.
So I think when I was putting the questions together, the biggest one from two big ones were who, so who's here, like, and I getting a sense of proximity to the courts, usage, just getting a real feel for and how we can communicate with these folks. But then the what is also there, of what's essentially the what being what's working well and what could be improved upon, without asking leading questions, right? That force people either into any one of those brackets, but to try and elicit essentially positives and negatives that might come to people's minds.
Yeah, I liked how you framed your questions, Andrew. I felt like they did exactly what you just said.
This is what I do for my day job.
I can tell. Yeah, I think the proximity thing is really interesting. I know that we have skaters that come from all over the place. Like skaters come from Wilmette, they're coming from Chicago, they're coming from Skokie, all over the place because there's not a lot of skate friendly areas around. And I have a hunch that most of our players are very local, but I don't know that for certain. So I think that'll be great information to have.
All right, I took notes on all those and I'll synthesize that, send it out to you in an email. And then I'll send out to the committee. What I'll do is put together like a little basketball package. So we have the questions are supposed to go to you, ideas and edits for the recommendations for the sign. I'll include the statement and I'll ask people for resources, articles to include
Great.
to the statement. Is there anything I'm missing? Okay.
No. Oh, unless you want to have everybody take a peek at the signage and send me thoughts on that.
Yeah, sorry, I got that. Ideas and edits for the sign.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, so let's move on to, I guess let's table the why do we choose to do equity work for when Elaine is here, hopefully in December. Aisha, if you agree, I feel like we can go through the process for reviewing documents because Elaine will be able to watch the video.
Yes.
Okay, so this,
go ahead.
sorry, I just want to say to Natalie and Andrew, this is in reference to the ordinances at the Park District. Aisha has put together a way for us to divvy out the ordinances so we can get the ones that Dr. Effiam had recommended get rewritten. How we go about doing that.
Okay.
Can I share my screen? Oh yeah, I can.
And can I just share one thing just before you start, Aisha? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Because it was just mentioned that we're switching to the 4th Thursday, and in December that would be the 22nd. So just to raise to our consciousness that that is very close to the holiday, and some folk may not be be able to join us.
Thank you. I had not looked that far ahead. Okay, I'll verify with the committee that the 22nd is actually viable. Does that work for everyone who's here now? I'll be here and around.
I will be available, I believe.
Okay, and I think if I'm not,
I don't. Did you hear both of us? I know we were talking at the same time.
I think I did, but maybe I didn't.
Okay, Andrew, go ahead.
Sorry, I swear, Aisha, this will be the last time. I will need to consult with my family first before I can make any promises.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So what you have on your screen is the drafts of a document to help us walk through the process for reviewing any documents that we need to review. So I think first, as we walk through it, it would be great to hear sort of feedback, reactions, and things of that nature. And then hopefully, well, I guess JC will have to check to see if we want to put this into use tonight by looking at one of the ordinances or not. But so the first step in the process is to divide the document, in this case is ordinances, into sections so that the document can be reviewed in a timely manner. And considerations that we want to have are around expertise for people within the committee with that division, the amount of time we have available to actually review a document, and the size of the document as well. Some of the criteria that we want to use when we're looking at documents are outlined here, which incorporates pieces of the racial equity lens process. So questions when you have a piece of a document and you're reviewing it on your own or in a smaller group, or even we're reviewing it in this meeting as a group, We want to be thinking about if the procedure, process, document impacts a marginalized community, and thinking about if it does, how does it impact that community? We want to then determine if we need to engage members of that community for additional information and input, and then also determine how. So is it a survey? Is it an invitation, some sort of formal invitation to come into a meeting? Is it a specific focus group? And then making that recommendation known to the chair, to the committee, if it was outside of a committee meeting, and then obviously sharing that recommendation with the board. There is a statement in here that the committee needs to determine the thresholds for community engagement. So do documents need firsthand feedback? Is there a deeper discussion that's required? Does the document have, are there implications that have significant impact on the community? Is there difficulty for either the committee or the board with coming to consensus for a recommendation or a change? And then the consideration of time as well. So is this a decision that needs to happen immediately? Is there more time that can allow for a process that would allow for something like a planning out a focus group or not? Another item that we want to have in mind when we're looking at documents is there any discriminatory language involved in that document that we see when we're reading through? Is there a lack of clarity of language? And this includes things like undefined acronyms. So having RPD or words that might require someone to further sort of interpret the meaning or have to search for the meaning of a word. So we want to have those things also top of mind when we're looking through documents. We also want to be looking for, is there any gendered language? So is there the use of she, her, he, him? So that we're removing that language and then revising it and rewriting it in a way that it's not gendered. And then thinking about, is there a language that is typically defined through a dominant cultural lens? So things like being professional or exhibiting professionalism. Those are things that we also want to have a lens for, because the idea of professionalism is typically defined through a dominant cultural lens and can mean different things to different cultural groups. Then once we've completed the individual reviews, we would, if that review happens outside of this meeting, the reviews would come back to this committee to then make final determinations about updating the document, the policy, whatever it is that we're reviewing, and then making a proposal to the board to recommend whatever it is that we're proposing needs to be revised. And what we want to consider as guiding questions when we come back together as a group to have those discussions are, do the recommendations that our breakout groups have decided, do they maintain the integrity of the document? Are the recommendations aligned with diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations? Does it align with the equity lens process? And then also, does it require community engagement? So that is the process for when we get a document, or in this case, ordinances to come through, and how we want to consider how to move forward and make recommendations to the board. Any questions or thoughts around this process or sections of it? Things that we feel might be missing?
I have a question. So for step number 2, let's say I have a section and I do feel that it warrants like a focus group or some kind of community input. I'm not doing that yet. I'm bringing that during step 3 to the committee and saying, I think we need to get a focus group together to examine this further. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Also, this is great, Aisha. Thank you so much. It's really useful.
I have just some really practical questions, Aisha, and they may be dumb, but the first one is, how much do we have to go through? Like, I mean, what's the size of the ordinance book?
The ordinance that was sent out, I believe there's maybe like, I want to say at least there's 10 or fewer. sections
Oh.
recommended by the previous consultant to
Okay.
review, and some of them are really short. And I if we want to go look at one tonight, we can, and you'll see how short it is.
Yeah. Okay.
But even with the length of it, there's things that need to be considered about the way that it's written.
JC, so Andrew, our park ordinance is big. It's a big old thing. And Dr. Effiam had gone through the entire thing with her team and identified some sections that she thought could be examined, that warranted a look through. So that's what we're starting with. JC, did Dr. Effiam indicate like her thoughts about each of those sections, or did she just list the sections? Did she list it and say, here's why, or just list it for review?
If you look at her report, it's more general. It's not like this ordinance needs to be changed for this needs to be changed for that. It's
Okay.
These ordinances need to be reviewed for this general reasoning for, language.
Okay. I couldn't remember if she just listed them all, or if she like listed and said, here's what you're looking for.
I think we lost Andrew.
I think we did lose Andrew.
Oh no.
I was gonna say it might be useful just to look at one, just for reference to
I do.
make
I think
the
so.
conversation a little bit to come together, gel a little bit better.
I agree. I think that'd be really helpful. And Aisha,
Now, Andrew had questions, but
I'm hoping he's gonna pop back in at some point, soon. I also just wanted to echo what Natalie said. When we started talking about rewriting ordinances, this is something that made me really nervous. Not only because I recognize the importance of this, but also because of the permanence, which is why it's important, right? Like this is a big piece to making Ridgeville anti-racist, is having these ordinances written in the proper way. And I find that really intimidating to even figure out what it is that we're supposed to be looking at. And this document that you created honestly makes me feel like I can go and look at those ordinances now and very confidently bring back to the committee suggestions. The way that you broke it out in terms of exactly what we're looking for, I think is really helpful. So I just wanted to say thank you. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, there he is.
Andrew, we lost you.
I'm so sorry. My internet went down. So
No worries. Okay, so what we talked about is we're gonna take a look. Oh wait, you have more questions. Andrew, do you have more questions?
I guess my other question is, if there's 10 sections and there's going to be some, a lot of substantive material to work through, are we going to schedule like one marathon REDI committee meeting to work through them all together at once we've done our individual work?
So the hope was that the majority of the work would happen outside, so that then when we're coming back together as a group, it really is, we've all followed the same process, used the same considerations. And the hope then is that it will be less intensive when we all come back together, because we'll sort of just be looking at sort of these key sort of, does it maintain integrity, these key questions, instead of going through all of these questions. That might not answer the question completely, because we'll have to see in process as well how it goes to determine, how long it actually takes us as a group when we come back together.
Well, I think, Andrew, to speak to your question too, I think that we can see how it goes, right? Like I think once we get through a couple, we'll see if we just want to knock out all of them in a meeting, or if we want to take a little bit more time to get that done.
I would recommend, we can obviously figure out how we're going to do it here in the meeting. I do recommend taking all 10 to the board at once, though, because I think we need to give them plenty of time to look through it. But ideally, they're going to pass all of them at once, and then that's one addendum to the general ordinance instead of 10.
And separate ones. Thank you for helping us to keep that in mind. So what Natalie's referring to, Aisha and Andrew, just so you both know, is when there's changes to the ordinances, it just gets added to the end as an addendum, as opposed to the whole thing actually getting rewritten. So that's, I think that's an important piece for us to keep in mind too as we move forward.
Question was partly related to, it's been on our to-do list here since I joined the committee, and more concerned that let's get this done. Especially I'm going to be gone over the summer. And so if we can get it turned around, I'd assume to the board maybe in March, if there's any, back and forth that has to happen, then that can be done before the end of May. Yeah. So I'm more just thinking like, how are we gonna, how's this gonna unfold?
Yeah,
I appreciate that long-term, I appreciate that long-term planning. Because yes, ideally, I didn't even think about it taking that long. Hopefully it won't. Okay. I think maybe let's look at an ordinance. Let's apply the process and kind of see how that feels a little bit.
So we could start with, I have one pulled up, and these are the ordinances that were pulled out by Dr. Effie. Let me make sure that I can actually. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
And is it possible to share that document in the chat, Aisha, that you just shared about the questions that we're going to ask?
Let's see.
That way we can have it up simultaneously.
You should be able to attach a document, I think. Yeah. So in the chat box, on the bottom right, there's like a little sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does everyone have it?
Yeah.
Oh, how cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Excuse me.
Okay. So I think when we're looking at this, I know, well, I'm not going to make any comment. I'm just going to pull it up and then we can think about it and, oops, uh-oh, how do I, okay. Can everyone see this just fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's this section here. 6.05 was one of the sections that was in the list.
This brings to mind the cities, the fiasco with the city's signs about that were really negative towards homeless people.
I hadn't heard about that. Can you quickly catch me up?
It's the visual. You have to see the visual of the sign. It's hard to explain.
Okay.
It was a anti-homeless campaign, and the sign said, "Have a heart, give smart," and essentially don't give anything to folk on the sidewalk, but they suggested donating to institutions. So it was, and they were tagged, like people were kind of correcting them. They crossed out give smart, so it was just have a heart actually. And and it was in the round table. You just Google it and you'll find it.
Okay.
This past summer, and the city finally pulled down the signs, didn't acknowledge any animus, just backed away.
Okay, thank you for that. I hadn't heard about that. Okay. Hold on, I'm sorry. I made all my screens too small. Now I can't read anything.
I assume we're diving into number 2. Is that right? For the sake of like the procedure.
I couldn't unmute myself. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know what I just did on accident.
Okay, so if we run through the questions.
Oh, go ahead. I was
Sorry,
going to say, I think one of the things that just happened right away was Andrew was bringing up the thinking about the intention. What is the intention of this ordinance? And so that's one thing to just be aware of and have in mind is what is the potential intention and potential impact on members of the community.
And I'll just say, sorry, Natalie, you were going to say.
I just screwed up. I accidentally typed something into the review process and like screwed up your formatting. And I'm feeling guilty about that. And I'm trying to fix it. That's what's happening.
I was just going to say that it's funny because I think it just seems to me it's very targeted against homeless people. And I'm thinking here of, I've seen collections taken on park property in approved ways. For instance, I think I've seen, I want to say I've seen donation box at the concerts on the Ridge of some sort. So it would, my sense is it's been inconsistently applied, if at all. Yeah.
I mean, just from a staff perspective, I can tell you, we're very stringent about that. We don't take a collection. I know the box that you're referring to, it's an idea box that kids mostly write things that they want us to put in the parks, and they put it in the box, at least if that's what you're thinking of. But
not the park, it was on a, yeah.
Okay. This is something we're careful about in like public event spaces. So if you're selling anything or you're asking for donations, it can happen here, but you just have to have a permit for it. So we have to know that it's going on. And a lot of times that's approved. The thing that comes to mind that I think this is more speaking to is people just individually like panhandling, I guess, asking for money, which does happen. People come to the building quite often. The thing that strikes me about this is that it happens all the time, and like it's in the ordinance, but nobody knows that it's in the ordinance. So like, it seems to me like there should be some kind of clarity on or transparency on what this means and how do we communicate that to people. So let's say that you did want to like raise money or you were collecting funds for something. The answer is yes, you can do that. And here's how you do it. Kind of like the barbecuing policy is like, yes, these things can happen. We just need to know and like be able to support you while you're doing it. I'm not sure how to address the other piece of this with the, you know, the asking for money, because yeah, it seems, you know, it is obviously targeting the homeless population or people without homes. It's how do we say this?
I believe that the term that people are using are unhoused.
Unhoused people that are unhoused.
I believe so. If anyone else knows of a different term, please, I'd like to know. So Natalie, I guess one of my questions is, I mean, if somebody does come and ask for, you know, donations for their own purpose, right? Like they're just using it for themselves or not doing it for an organization. How is that currently handled at the Park District?
I either give them cash or tell them I don't have any. Like there is a gentleman who comes a few times a year and he rings the doorbell. And we, you know, whoever's there goes downstairs, or if the door is unlocked, like pre-COVID when it was just open all the time, like sometimes he would come in. I mean, I know Brian's given him some cash before. I've given him some cash. Like it's just, you know, we just kind of deal with it on a person to person instance.
So I guess my question.
I think there's a sign on the door that says no soliciting. I'm pretty sure there's a sign on the front door. Or like when you walk in.
I think you're right. Although I can't exactly remember. I guess my question is this, does this even have to be in the ordinance?
Well, my question would be is read it without the first sentence. And then my other observation would be this would be fairly easy, I think, to find some best practices online that are shared more broadly for municipalities. I think with a little bit of research, we could ensure that we'd be acting in a more informed way.
Yeah.
That's wise.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could take out the first, obviously change the title of it, and take out the first line about no person shall beg or panhandle on Park District property. I think you could take that out and maybe, you know, I don't think it belongs in the ordinance. I think there could be a policy around it, right? So that would be a separate, like if somebody comes to the Park District asking for money for themselves, what is our policy on that? How do we help that individual? You know, how do we educate ourselves on the best way to help that individual and provide resources to them? I think this piece of the ordinance can be adjusted and then there can be policy created around how to manage those moments.
Well, are the gardens still providing, are there still like, I mean, I know there's not, especially not now, snow cold, but like when food was being grown this summer, were the coolers still left out back with the extras? Like the food pantry?
I mean, it's all spoken for from the food pantry. Like we are collecting it specifically for them to pick up and take.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's what I mean. That's still happening?
Oh yeah, we do that. We're a community donation space. And then we also, our youth grow team also grows specifically for the pantry.
So maybe part of this would be, you know, I think that the signage needs to be reevaluated, like Andrew said, so that we can come up with, you know, if it does, so we can have more appropriate verbiage on whatever's posted. But then, you know, maybe along with that signage, we can have, you know, contact information and addresses for the food pantry that we're supplying food for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to help connect people to resources.
Mm-hmm. I know we have been approached about it, and our insurance won't allow for us to do it. But we've been approached about being a location for a love fridge. Is that what they're called? The love fridges. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
And we can't have one on property, but I can know where they are, and I can, you know, let people know where they can go to utilize it.
So I've been meaning to talk to you about this for a while. I think it would be fantastic, and maybe around Thanksgiving is a good time. I don't know how much it would take to really get this up and running. One of the things that I've been trying to do, and I have not done it consistently, but like every time I go to the grocery store to get a couple things to throw in those pantries, and knowing which pantries or like which fridges are closest and on my route. I thought it would be fantastic to have like a Ridgeville push of like, because I want to say at least 2 fridges within Ridgeville boundaries, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. You know, maybe we can have like you know, we can encourage people within our community to consistently fill those fridges instead of doing, because the other parts of the community do these like pushes that are like one-time drop-offs. But maybe we can help encourage people to, you know, have it a permanent on their list, an extra loaf of bread, a thing of applesauce or whatever it is to go drop off on the fridges.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I can talk about that
Yes.
off Zoom, but that would be great.
Make that
Happy to post about that.
So I'm just gonna throw my personal 2 cents out here, which is, and I again, we would really need to do some background on this, and it should be fairly easy to look at some court cases and to find some really humanizing policies that already exist and that tend to the freedom and the humanity of all persons. So, but I don't mind being solicited, even if I'm, you know, at an event or, and I know there's different levels of ordinances around active and aggressive, or passive and aggressive, I think is the language that's used. Even there's some problems with those dynamics. But I think that, you know, one of us could do some research, possibly connect with someone at Connections who knows about policy, and come back with a really good recommendation without much effort.
I think that sounds fantastic. And I think that that's, you know, a good example of how we go back to number 1 and divvy this out, right? Like, I don't know. You know, we can each figure out what connections we have in the community and divvy up the ordinances that way so we can get those resources in place.
I'm trying to read through the questions Aisha gave us, but there's so many of them. I'm sorry. I'm like,
there are lots. So I'll pause us here because this is us sort of trying to look at an ordinance and go through that process to just do some processing of this process. So how are we experiencing this, of looking through this? Like I said, it's a very short ordinance, but there's a lot to unpack in those few lines that can lead to a lot of different types of discussion. So how are you all experiencing going through just this short couple of sentences?
There's certainly discriminatory language here, discriminatory policy. I think it's clear, which is troubling.
I agree. And I also, you know, just want to reiterate again, like how important it is that this, you know, gets completed, and it gets completed in a really thoughtful way. I think this is a really good example for us to use too. I think, you know, maybe a good next step, and, you know, maybe not necessarily for this meeting, but maybe we kind of, you know, or maybe even on our own, go through the 10 ordinances that Dr. Effiam had pointed out, and, you know, kind of see if there's any ones that we would feel more comfortable with than others. So that maybe in the December, if we meet on December 22nd, we can start divvying out from there based on what either connections of the community we have where we can do this research, or, you know, areas that we're a little more familiar with than others. I don't know how.
Yeah. It's kind of a question, kind of a just thought. Aisha, I'm just thinking, like, in our discussion, for example, I used the example of the gentleman that came and has asked for cash before, and Brian's given him cash and I've given him cash. Andrew mentioned he doesn't mind being approached or solicited. But I don't think that we can look at it from our perspective and what we're comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with. We have to look at it. The integrity of the document, like you mentioned, like that's in there. Like we have to keep in mind the integrity of the district as a whole. And I think sometimes I have a hard time with that. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to like check that in myself as I'm going through this stuff?
I would go to, some of these ordinances, the last line talks about having to obtain a permit. So the real question is, and we started in this place, is what is the intention? Who is the intended audience, and what is the goal of this ordinance? And the last line is about getting a permit. So what is it that the park is intending the community to do in this particular area? So that's the question that I would continue to go back to, is what is the intention here? And then to look for where it may be on track, and then figuring out the places where it might be off base.
Is it possible that some of them just need to be rephrased? I mean, obviously specific language, like we'll be looking for those things too, but even just starting with yes, like, yes, you can solicit for fund, like you can fundraise here, here's how it goes, versus like so much of it, and I understand, but like so much of it comes from a no place first. And sometimes just shifting the perspective on it allows people to see what they can do before they're immediately told they're not allowed to.
Yeah, and I think as you read through some too, they start with no person shall. No person shall. They're not all of them, but a good deal of them say what you shall not do, but that you should obtain a permit, but it doesn't necessarily draw that through line of what is it that I'm getting the permit for.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's where the rewriting comes in handy, to clearly state, what are you asking me to do in this situation?
Okay. And then I have questions about the permit process too, because that's also a form of restriction in many ways. And then, so the one reflection briefly about the integrity of the document is that and we're not working off much here, but from what I can see, if this didn't exist in this space between these two paragraphs, the document would probably have integrity. And then also there's a broader question of integrity of, we've already named that, Natalie, you've said that you and others have given, right? So there's integrity with actual ethical practice that's already going on. So maybe the document itself would, I don't know, there's the integrity piece is a little dubious to me, because actually if everything had integrity with what you all been doing, then it wouldn't be in here at all, perhaps.
I was thinking of integrity more as a whole, in terms of like what the document, like the ordinance as a whole is meant to achieve, like why it exists, I guess, like the purpose of it, not necessarily that like there's integrity in the practice, or integrity in the, I will say too, the ordinance was written in 1939, and edits have been made along the way, but, I'm actually surprised Pat only found 10 that she recommended that we look at. If anything, there's certainly person first language that needs to be updated. I'm sure there's gender language that needs to be updated. I'm sure there's lots of fun little nuggets in there we'll find along the way, but the 10 is a great starting off point, but yeah, I guess that's where I was, what I was thinking in reference to the word integrity was just the ordinance as a whole and the purpose it's meant to serve for the district. I don't know.
Well, I think the integrity on both those pieces is really important, right? Like, not only does the ordinance need to do what it's supposed to do, but I also think if there's going to be things in the ordinance, such as, you may not come and ask for money, and then people are coming to ask for money, and money's being handed out. I think that's another, right? The integrity lives in both those places at the same time. But I do want to add in there, Natalie, that I think your comment of flipping it on the positive, and maybe this is just, the preschool teacher in me, when we do class rules, it's not about telling kids to stop running in the classroom. Right. When you tell a kid to not run in the class, you are telling them, like, you can jump, you can skip, right? Like, you can race through the classroom. But if you tell them, use your walking feet, it's very clear. So I think that idea of flipping it on the positive not only makes it more welcoming and I think makes people feel more included in the parks. I thought it also, like Aisha was saying, it makes it really clear what you are allowed to do. And I do, like Andrew said, we need to look at the permit process. I can't remember, because I know that had come up with the barbecue policy repeatedly.
Yeah.
But it's something to keep in mind that anytime anyone's asking for a permit, whether it's for donations, whether it's for barbecue, that procedure should be the same across the board.
So
Yes, it is. And that process was fine-tuned with Dr. Effiam. So she was a part of those conversations. And we made some changes, to the permit form and how accessible it is. We changed some language in there. Yes, I'm sure there's things to review and probably update, but she was a part of that process with us. And it is now the same. So there's one permit process for all of those things. If you want to rent space, if you want to barbecue, if you need tables and chairs, it's a little bit different if you're a vendor and you're selling or you're fundraising. Sometimes there's some liability that comes along with that. So we need like proof of insurance and that kind of stuff. But that piece of the permit piece is the same for everybody all the time.
Okay. And again,
and also, yeah.
Right, go ahead. You can finish up.
I was just going to say, and also like, and this is another thing, I mentioned this earlier, like so many of these things, nobody knows about it. You know what I mean? Like people will be barbecuing in the park and they're not supposed to because we don't know. And it's a policy, is like, if there's going to be open flame or fire, you can do it, but we have to know about it so that we can help you safely dispose of the coals. Nobody knows that. And we've updated that policy. We've changed some things. We've made the permit process easier, but there's not, unless you're looking for the information and you have the forethought that like, I wonder if it's okay to do it. People don't know. And like, you can't begrudge them for that. It's the same thing with this, right? Like, it's not said anyway, like nobody knows like, that this is not okay. So yeah, it's like, does it have a place in the ordinance? If we're going to enforce it, okay, maybe let's figure out how to make it equitable and humanize it. But if it's not going to be enforced and it doesn't belong in there in the first place, and we can probably create some kind of policy or resources or something that will actually help people in these instances.
And I'm just stuck in this conversation. The whole game is fixed for people with addresses. So we're talking about an ordinance, a municipal ordinance. To vote, you have to have an address. And so, so it's the whole game is rigged for housed persons in the district.
Sure, and in a lot of ways, if you don't have access to the internet, if you don't know how to use the internet, like I have so many, I count at least 5 students that we have that take and blessings to them, they figured it out, but their yoga classes have been transitioned to Zoom during COVID, and took them a lot of time to figure that out. And like, how many times on a Tuesday night my phone rings and I'm helping somebody figure out how to click the Zoom link, you know, like people have to be able, we have to be able to make all the information accessible to everybody all the time. And it's really hard to do that. But, you know, I think as we're going through all of this, figuring out the transparency piece and the accessibility piece is really important. You know, all of that considered. That's all.
I think this is a really helpful discussion. I mean, clearly we're not like going to come to a final conclusion about what we want to do with this ordinance. But I think this is a great example of what we're looking to. I do remember having a conversation with Pat, with Dr. Effiam, and her saying that she really was kind of astounded that there wasn't a lot more blatantly racist language because of when the ordinances were written. But I also would like to emphasize that just because it's not blatant doesn't mean it's not there, right? Like, I think that even just in this ordinance, I think that we see these undertones, and I think that we know what it's saying. We know what those purposes are of having that in there. And just because it's not as blatant as we would think from the date that it was written, you know, it's still really important. And I know you all know this. I'm speaking to, you know, preaching to the choir, but I just, you know, it's still really important that we change this. And I think this particular ordinance, I think, can be rewritten to not necessarily be speaking to the unhoused, but be more clear about, if you want to fundraise, you know, how to be able to do that. Because my guess is also, you know, if someone were in a Ridgeville Park and they were upset by somebody asking them for money, they're not going to be calling the park district, and the park district isn't going to be sending somebody over there to manage that situation.
That's correct.
The more likely scenario is going to be that person is going to call the Evanston Police Department. And the police are going to be the ones deciding whatever they want to do, because they're not aware of the ordinance either, right? It's not like
right.
he is walking around with a book on Ridgeville rules and helping people to enforce that.
Right.
So it just seems pointless for it to be in there altogether.
Correct. If staff is managing a circumstance where that happens, it's going to be probably at a public event, or it's just going to be when we're in the office, which I already know has happened. So I think, you know, creating some kind of like personnel policy or policy surrounding like, what do we do in those moments? What kind of resources can we offer? You know, that's helpful, and that's the right thing to do. I'm not sure it belongs in the ordinance. I mean, that being said, who knows? One of the commissioners might come up with 10 reasons why it does, but.
No, absolutely. And maybe there's some legal reason that we're not aware of that, right? There's a lot of layers to this. You know, I think Elaine would probably be able to speak a little bit more to the legality of it, but
yeah.
Okay. What's our next step on this then? Do we want to I'll let you answer that question, Aisha.
So I would say we need to resend the ordinances and the list of the specific ones that were pulled out by Pat, and have everyone just read through them, and then to figure out how to divide them up amongst the group. And I think the discussion that happened today is an example of the type of discussion that would likely happen and thought process when you have those specific ordinances. And the beauty of the structure is that then if you reach a stuck place, or you need more help or support or whatever it is, it comes back to this group to have a look at what's being recommended or suggested, or the recommendation that then would come out of this group. So there's layers built into that process too.
I think that's super helpful, and I'm excited. I feel like this is going to be a good. I mean, I know it's going to take long, but I feel like it's going to be more efficient with the instructions that you gave us.
Yeah. And so, JC, I know one of the suggestions that you made was for everyone to review them and to, with a lens to sort of that question around expertise, and to look to see if there are ones that you feel you have expertise in a particular area, to raise your hand to say that, you know, these ordinances are ones that I feel most comfortable with reviewing.
Okay, I'm gonna send these out as 2 separate emails. I'll do like the basketball stuff in one email and then the ordinance stuff in another, for just for organization.
Thanks, JC.
Okay, is there anything else on this before we move on to the next item? So we went through, we just reviewed an ordinance. We're not going to quite practice rewriting. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable once we divvy up, you know, following the process. I don't know if anyone feels any different. If we wanted to do a rewriting together, we could. But I don't necessarily know that we need to do that since it's going to be coming back to the committee anyway. Oh, in terms of need for further training, just to fill Andrew in, since you weren't at the board meeting, Aisha did get a chance to talk to the board about her ideas for training moving forward. I don't know if you want to hear from Aisha. She's got kind of like bullet pointed what she would cover. Natalie and I had a chance to hear that in the board meeting. But Andrew, I don't know if you want to hear a little bit about that.
I can go look back on the YouTube on the recording if that saves us some time. Just if you ballpark me, when were you in the meeting, Aisha? Or when were you at the normal, like 2/3 of the way through?
Was that last week?
Yeah.
Was that just last Thursday? It seems like
I'll scroll through and find you. I'll listen to that.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the whole meeting was only an hour.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we really flew through it.
I'm going to update you all. I've got that under the new business. I'll update you on a little bit on that meeting. And if I remember correctly, I want to say the REDI committee stuff was about 3/4 of the way through.
Okay. That's
2.5 and 3/4.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yes.
And I think we're going to get to it in a minute, but I've been doing the YW Equity Institute board diversification workshops. And so when our board passed our equity charter, part of that charter was that we all had to go through equity training. A lot of us did it with Dr. Effiam, but we have new board members, we have new committee members, we have new staff. And so that's something that we've talked to Aisha about, is that training piece. The board had voted and moved that in the interim between then and when Aisha will be able to do the training with us, or we figure that out together, that the new folks would need to do a equity training with the YW, because we had done some of those workshops in the past and they've been great. Update on those. I talked to Heather from the YW at the last board diversification workshop. They are not going to be offering them in the same way that they used to. I keep looking at their website and hoping I'm going to find the schedule update. So I asked her. She said they're doing them for organizations, but they're not doing the like individualized like bias training or white privilege training. So my point, I do think we should prioritize this training. I think it's going to be important since we have waited because I've been like trying to find it through the YW and it hasn't been listed. And now that I know it's never going to be listed, I do think that we should probably prioritize getting that done. And something to keep in mind, there will be an election in April. So we will have some of our current commissioners will no longer be, and we will hopefully have at least 3 people run, and then we'll be able to have a full board, but there will be some new folks on there. Okay, that's it.
Well, so that was going to be my question. Do we want to try to get this training done before these commissioners, right? Because both Rogers and Braun have made an official announcement that they will not be running again. Do we want to push for them to be a part of the training before they're off the board?
They actually did not make an announcement. They declined to answer.
Oh, I apologize. I misunderstood.
No, that's okay. They declined. They chose not to answer. Diana said that she is planning to run for her seat. So, but she was the only one that responded.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. Has anyone turned in their paperwork to run?
No, and they likely will not until the week it's due.
Okay.
It's due Monday, December 12th. And usually people come on that day to turn it in. Sometimes they'll come in before, but that's not a normal process.
Okay. 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 Thank you for clarifying that. I had a very wrong understanding of the situation.
Can I just a point of clarification? The signatures are due on the 12th. Is that, Natalie? Is that correct?
Yes. Tell your friends. Tell everyone who will listen to you that lives in the district. We need candidates. I don't actually know what happens if we don't have any. I don't know.
Casey.
I know. I mean, I don't hate it, and it solves the problem of needing board representation on the REDI committee.
People, I to be honest with you, actually, now that I think about it, it would probably be less work for me to be on the board than on the committee because I wouldn't have to do agenda.
It certainly would.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not happening.
Anyway, I just wanted to let y'all know that scheduling change, and I think the training will be a really important thing. I don't know the answer if we should try to get it done before or after. It might be useful to just do it as soon as we can. We're ready, and then we have it. And then as those new commissioners come in, they can watch the recording and we can really put it to practice. So, you know, I don't think it's important that we wait. I think my inclination is that as soon as Aisha is ready and we're able to schedule it, let's do it.
Aisha, you're nodding. I'm assuming you agree?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm leaning towards too, for a whole slew of reasons. The biggest one being, I don't think at this point our committee should be postponing anything. We're behind, right? Like, okay, awesome. The next item on the agenda is divide up the remainder of the ordinances. You know, we talked about how we're going to take a peek and figure out which ones we feel the most able to do. That brings us to new business, an update from the board meeting. Andrew, you were or I guess, Julie might be curious too. So this last board meeting was very quick. There was pretty much no discussion on anything. We just ran through the agenda. There was nothing to be voted on in terms of the REDI committee. There's really not too much to share. What I do just want to throw out there is the whole feel of the board was very different than it had been in the past. I don't really know if it was in a negative or a positive way. I can't quite speak to that, but Yeah, it felt different. I don't really know how else to, what else to say. Andrew, I do recommend kind of zipping through it a little bit just to kind of get a feel for the meeting. And it went by, it was very, very cut and dry. I don't know, Aisha or Natalie, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but it was uneventful. All right, so that brings us, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think uneventful is just a good way to describe the meeting, and just the pacing was pretty just quick.
Yes.
I will say, just because we talked about it last time, in the October board meeting, 2 of the commissioners had said that they would no longer attend meetings if they weren't in person. The board president did a anonymous vote of everybody who is required to participate in the meetings, and then let us know that the majority had voted in favor in sticking with Zoom through the end of the year. So the 2 commissioners that had said they would not come to a Zoom meeting again did come. They did come. So I don't know if that means they will continue to come for the remainder of the year, but they did come in November. And then President Mitchell will reassess at the end of the year. We'll see where the proclamation is at for the state, and then make an assessment and go from there in terms of will we meet through Zoom or in person.
Thank you for clarifying that, Natalie. I'd forgotten about that piece. And then also just because the October meeting did not run in its entirety, then both the October and November reports were both given in November for the REDI committee and for some other, ritual business also, but both reports were given. Okay, our other piece of new business was the equity, diversity and inclusion training for the board. We talked about this in that last agenda item. I'm not sure either, Aisha, if you have anything else to add on that, or if anyone else has any other questions on that. Okay. Yes.
Aisha, what's the next step for that? Because if we do it all together, it'll have to be a special meeting. I'll have to open it to the public, not for public participation, but so that they can watch if they'd like. And there'll be an opportunity for citizen comment at the beginning. What's the next step? Because I'm the corporate secretary, I'll need to coordinate with everyone. So do you and I just need to talk about that offline?
Mm-hmm. And it really is just a matter of scheduling the date.
Okay.
And confirming that that's the way that we want the training to be delivered, is for it to be everyone together.
And how and when do we decide that?
I think that it should be everyone together. So that's my recommendation. But if there are other opinions about, because of the way that it then has to be delivered, because it's everyone together, I'm open to hearing other thoughts.
Right, because even if the board does the training together, that has to be an open meeting. If we do the training together, that has to be an open meeting. So having both together doesn't really change all that much. It's more the difficulty of finding a date for everybody.
Oh, I can find a date. Don't you worry. I will do it. I'm a big supporter of all together. I think getting everybody on the same page, using the same language, is super, super important. So I'm a big supporter of that. And you're right, JC, it will have to be open regardless, even if we split it up. But I think the transparency piece is really nice. And people being allowed to come watch if they want to. I hope you're comfortable with that. There's not much I can do about it, but I think that's just a nice thing,
Well, and I wonder, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but would it would it be something that we could invite the community, clearly not to actually participate in, but be like, we are doing this equity training. If you're interested in hearing this information for yourself, also, you're welcome to observe? Or is that not a door that we want to open?
I mean, I think so. There's been so much conversation about Ridgeville Park District's commitment to equity, lack of equity, the inception of this committee. You know, I think by inviting the community to even just learn about what we're learning about, so that they, you know, can have a frame of reference for the language that we're using and how we're prioritizing and you know, talking about these things. I think these things that will come up, I think I don't know if anybody will come, but I think inviting them is an important piece.
I was just going to say, pedagogically, I'm curious to see, because I mean, vulnerability is an important part of this, and implicitly by being a public meeting, that's going to be inhibited. Also, accountability is another thing that's also a big part of this, and that will be increased by it being a public meeting, possibly. So it's just going to be an odd space. So blessings on you, Aisha, as you navigate that. And it's just going to be odd.
It is, Andrew. I will say that was one thing when we did at a certain point, our trainings with Dr. Effiam became public meetings, and it changes everything, right? Like, I'm not going to be talking about some of my personal experiences that I would if we weren't being recorded and putting out in the public. It absolutely colors the entire experience. But unless we were to break up in like small groups, because of the Open Meetings Act, there's not a way around it. But it's a very different experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say that is what I anticipate, is that because of the nature of how the meeting has to happen, that it would likely look different if it was if everyone was in a different space. But the benefit of everyone being together, hearing the same information at the same time, is the opportunity we want to try to pursue.
I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, moving forward, if this is something that works well and we want to dwell deeper into, maybe we can do some small groups where like one committee member gets paired up with one board member, and we do our own, exploratory thing on our own. That's not an open meeting. Maybe that's something that we can look down the line, especially once we have the new board set up. I think there's a lot of value in that also.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I mean,
something else you wanted to say?
Me?
Oh, Natalie, I'm sorry. I was saying yes.
Oh, I don't remember. I'm very excited to do it. That's all. I'm very excited. And I think that, eventually we can talk about too, like, we're never done learning about equity. So we can all go through an equity training, and that's very important especially right now, to just be on the same page and unify our language. But, we should, I would like, maybe if we update our equity policy, our charter, like maybe there's some type of annual commitment to, an external workshop or something that, we all need to partake in. I just think the continued learning piece is very important, and I don't think we should, we should keep everybody on the hook for that all the time.
Agreed. And maybe
I'm never afraid to ask awkward questions. So if there's awkward questions that come up in our group, training, I will probably ask it.
Good, and you should. Okay, I've kept you all longer than I was hoping to. I was hoping to keep this to an hour, but I think we had some good discussions. Does anybody have anything to say for the call of the committee?
I'll just throw out there that I don't know what this entails yet, but we're Kathy Tate Bradish and I are working together to start an environmental justice committee for the Evanston North Shore NAACP branch. And so we're just in the process of making connections with folk. I think probably connecting to the park district is also a good thing. So I don't know, Natalie, maybe sometime to sit down with you and chat, but also just to raise y'all's awareness that we're starting to do this. And who knows, maybe I'll come knocking on your door and asking for your assistance or something.
Love it.
Excellent. I don't think I have anything to add this week. You, Natalie?
No, I'm catching up. I went on a really awesome, I went to the Illinois Park and Rec Association's professional development school. Life-changing, really taught me a lot about my leadership strengths and both, how to optimize and capitalize on things that are not my strengths. And I talked about the REDI committee every day there quite a bit. Really cool experience, but yeah, anyway, so I'm catching up. So if you've sent me emails, if there's things to read, if there's people I need to reach out to, I'm going to do it now that I'm back.
Awesome. I'm excited about all the things that you've learned and watching you implement this at the park district. I guess I take it back. I just want to remind everybody, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this later. There are 3 open board positions. We would like to fill them with people who are committed to the park district and hopefully to equity also. So if there's anybody out there that can hear me, yes. I've been trying to drop information to to anyone that will listen to me. So that's my last.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, please. I will make it easy for you, as easy as I possibly can. I will walk you to the door. I can't walk through it with you, but I'll get you there.
And since Natalie can't say this, I will help you get signatures if you're an equity-minded candidate. So reach out.
Yeah, me too.
Yay.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Before we leave,
yes.
I have a question. I think that we approved the minutes for November 3rd, but the minutes I sent out were for September. Do you want me to edit that or?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. Great.
Do we need to pass? Are all minutes passed at this point, or are we waiting on anything?
We'll be waiting on the November one now. I just have to make a few edits before we send those out.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for catching that, Julie.
Yep. No, thank you. I was just curious.
Did we meet we met in October, right? Oh no, we met November 3rd.
Yeah, we skipped.
Okay, I got it. I'm caught up. Sorry. Thank you.
I know. Thanks, I got a little. I don't even know what date it is. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your month. If anyone's celebrating holidays with family next week, I hope they're super fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you all again. I will get emails out and we will lock down when our next meeting is going to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.